The night was cold on the barren mining planet of Kareth 4. Human engineer Ethan Cole was checking the power lines outside his outpost when he heard a strange cry behind the rocks. It was soft at first, almost like a wounded animal, but it carried a tone that felt human. He turned his flashlight and saw a small figure crouching in the dust, glowing lines moving faintly across pale skin. The child looked no older than 8, her silver hair tangled, her eyes shining like 2 moons. When the light hit her face, she hissed and jumped back, trembling. Ethan slowly lowered the torch, raising his hands. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you," he said gently. But before he could move closer, she rushed at him with surprising speed and bit his wrist. Pain shot through his arm, and the flashlight fell, rolling into the dirt. He shouted, pulled back, and the girl stumbled, breathing hard. Then, to his shock, she whispered a single word through shaking lips. "Pa." Ethan froze, the word echoing in his mind. The girl's eyes filled with tears, and she wrapped her tiny arms around his leg as if she had known him forever. He looked down at her bite mark, glowing faintly blue, warmth spreading under his skin. He didn't know why, but something deep inside told him this was no ordinary encounter. He carried the girl inside the outpost, wrapped her in a blanket, and tried to clean the bite. Her blood shimmered like liquid light. His scanner went crazy, showing unknown DNA patterns. She kept whispering "Pa" again and again, even when she fell asleep on his lap. Ethan sat there in silence, watching the storm outside. He was alone on this planet. No ships for weeks, no visitors. So where had she come from? And why did her voice make his chest ache like he had lost something long ago? By morning, the girl woke and wandered around the room, touching everything with curiosity. She seemed afraid of loud sounds, but fascinated by human tools. When he tried to speak, she mimicked his words clumsily. Soon she pointed to herself and said, "Leary." Then she touched his chest. "Pa." He sighed, half smiling, half confused. "All right, Leary, I guess I'm your pa now." But as the sun rose over the red horizon, the sensors outside began to beep. Something huge was entering the atmosphere. Ethan rushed to the console, scanning the sky. A massive ship, unlike any human design, was descending slowly, lights swirling like a crown of fire. Leary's expression changed from calm to fear. She grabbed his arm and whispered, "Queen Mother." Before he could ask anything, the roof trembled. Dust fell, and a column of light pierced through the clouds outside. From that beam stepped tall figures in gleaming silver armor, their faces hidden behind crystal masks. One of them looked directly at the outpost door and said in a deep, echoing voice, "Return the royal child to her mother." Ethan's heart pounded. Royal child? He looked at Leary, who hid behind him, clutching his shirt. He walked outside, raising both hands, the alien soldiers surrounding him. Then the air shimmered, and she appeared. The alien queen, taller than any human, her presence radiant like living starlight. Her eyes glowed the same blue as the mark on his arm. When she spoke, the ground seemed to hum. "You carry the mark of my daughter," she said, her voice both beautiful and terrifying. "She bit you, human, and that bond cannot be undone." Ethan didn't understand. He glanced at Leary, who peeked out and whispered softly, "Pa." The queen looked at the girl, then back at him. Her gaze softened for a heartbeat before turning serious again. "By our law, that makes you part of the royal bloodline," she said slowly. "Which means, Ethan Cole, you are now the chosen mate of the Queen of Vayara." The words hit him like thunder. He stared at her, unable to speak. Around him, the alien guards bowed, and the queen extended her hand with a calm, commanding grace. Ethan's mind screamed this can't be real, yet his pulse told another story. And as the sky burned above them, one thought filled his head. What happens to a human who accidentally becomes royalty in an alien empire? The queen's hand waited, glowing softly, and the storm winds whispered a single word that changed everything. Destiny. Ethan stood frozen as the alien queen's words echoed in his mind. Chosen mate. That couldn't be real. He was just an engineer, not a prince or a warrior. But when he looked at the small girl clinging to his leg, he knew running away wasn't an option. Leary's bright eyes glowed with trust, the same strange light that now pulsed under his skin where she had bitten him. The queen's soldiers lowered their weapons, yet none of them relaxed. Their posture was sharp, every movement precise. The queen herself moved closer, her silver gown flowing like liquid light. Ethan could feel the weight of her gaze, ancient and calm. "I am Queen Sereth of Veara," she said slowly. "And you, human, bear the bond of my bloodline." He shook his head, trying to steady his breath. "There must be a mistake. I didn't mean for any of this." But the queen only smiled faintly, a sad sort of smile that seemed to hide 1,000 years of sorrow. "There are no mistakes in fate," she whispered. Her hand brushed the air between them, and the glowing mark on Ethan's wrist shimmered brighter, connecting with the glow on her own chest. The soldiers murmured softly in their strange tongue, recognizing something sacred. Leary peeked out from behind Ethan and called again, "Pa." The queen's gaze softened for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke to her guards. "No harm must come to them. Prepare the chamber for transport." Before Ethan could protest, a wave of light surrounded him. The air rippled, his outpost vanished, and the next second he was standing inside a grand alien hall made of crystal and gold. The ceiling curved like a night sky, filled with stars. Strange floating shapes moved in the air, glowing softly like living spirits. Ethan turned around, dizzy, trying to understand how far he had been taken. Leary ran to him and hugged his waist, trembling. "It's okay," he whispered, though his voice shook. "I'll keep you safe." The queen approached the throne at the end of the hall, her steps silent, her presence filling the room. She turned and looked down at him. "The bond has already chosen. Human. It cannot be undone without harm to the child." Ethan frowned. "Bond? What bond?" "She only bit me." The queen raised her hand, and a holographic projection appeared in the air, showing an ancient symbol. "The bite of kin," she said. "It is an ancient Varen mark of recognition. When a royal child chooses a protector, their life essence connects. The protector becomes part of the royal bloodline. It is sacred." Ethan blinked, half believing, half terrified. "So, because she bit me, I'm, what, part of your family now?" The queen stepped closer, her eyes glowing softly. "Yes, and by our law, that bond also names you my chosen mate, the father figure of the child who carries my line." The words hit him like gravity. He stared at the queen, her beauty so unreal it almost hurt to look at her. But beneath that perfect face, he sensed something else, a deep loneliness. Leary reached out and tugged his sleeve. "Pa, stay," she whispered softly. Ethan's chest tightened. He could not walk away from her, even if this all felt impossible. The queen turned to her guards. "Leave us," she commanded. When the hall emptied, her tone changed, lower, softer, almost human. "You are frightened," she said. "But you must understand, my daughter was in danger. Her blood would have been hunted if she was found unguarded. She marked you to protect herself, and now you are bound by that choice." Ethan rubbed the glowing mark again, the warmth pulsing through his veins like a heartbeat, not his own. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. The queen looked away for a moment, her eyes reflecting distant galaxies. "Now, you stay here, within the palace, until the bond stabilizes. And if I refuse?" Her gaze snapped back to him, sharp and cold again. "Then your body will decay from the inside. The bond cannot survive without proximity to its source." He fell silent, realizing there was no escape. He glanced at Leary, her small hand gripping his shirt, her eyes filled with fear and hope, and something inside him shifted. Maybe it wasn't about fate or law. Maybe it was about her safety. He nodded slowly. "I'll stay, but only to protect her." The queen's lips curved into a faint smile, half proud, half sad. "Spoken like one of us," she said, turning away as the great doors closed behind her. Ethan looked around the vast chamber, feeling both trapped and chosen. The alien lights above dimmed to a soft glow, and Leary yawned, curling up beside him. He stared at the stars beyond the glass walls, wondering how one bite had pulled him into a destiny written among galaxies. And somewhere deep within the palace, unseen eyes watched him, eyes that burned with jealousy and plans of betrayal. Because not everyone in the royal court wanted a human to become part of the throne. The following days passed like a dream inside the palace of Veara. Ethan woke each morning in a chamber larger than his entire outpost, walls shimmering with living crystal, floors that glowed faintly beneath his feet. Leary followed him everywhere, laughing softly, curious about every human gadget he tried to fix. She called him Pa, with pure joy, and every time she did, something inside him softened. But outside their quiet room, the palace whispered. Servants bowed when he passed, yet their eyes held distrust. Alien nobles watched from balconies, speaking in hushed tones that stopped the moment he entered. They didn't like him. A human bonded to their queen was something unnatural. Ethan tried to ignore it, but tension grew thicker each day. The guards followed him everywhere, polite yet cold. Even the air felt heavier, as if the palace itself judged his presence. He kept telling himself he was only here to protect Leary until the bond faded. Yet every night, when she slept and silence filled the hall, his thoughts drifted to the queen. Queen Sereth was a mystery, both fierce and graceful. She ruled an empire stretching across 50 systems, yet she carried sadness in her eyes. Ethan saw her often in the great hall, surrounded by advisors, her voice calm but strong. When she looked at him across the crowd, something unspoken passed between them. Curiosity, maybe respect, maybe something more. One evening, a messenger arrived, kneeling before her throne. "Your Majesty," he said, "the council questions the human's place here. They say it breaks the ancient code." The queen's gaze flicked toward Ethan, standing near Leary. She said quietly, "The code bends to life, not the other way around." The hall fell silent, her tone making even the generals lower their heads. Still, Ethan saw their resentment linger like smoke. Later that night, he found himself walking along a balcony overlooking the stars. The queen appeared beside him, silent as the wind, her presence warm despite the cool air. "You shouldn't walk alone," she said softly. "Some still see you as an intruder." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, I've noticed." She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You are different from most humans I have met," she said. "You don't bow, yet you don't fight. You stand still, even when the universe shifts beneath you." He laughed quietly. "Guess I'm too stubborn to fall." Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close enough to make his chest tighten. For a long moment they stood in silence, watching comets streak across the dark sky. Then she spoke again, her voice lower, almost human. "When Leary bit you, she didn't just choose you for protection. She linked her heart to yours, and by extension, mine. If you leave or die, we both feel the void." Ethan turned toward her, shocked. "So, I'm tied to both of you?" "Yes," she whispered. "That is why the council fears you. They cannot harm you without hurting me." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, trying to make sense of it all. "I didn't ask for this, Sereth," he said softly. The queen tilted her head. "And yet you stayed." He looked down at the mark on his arm, glowing faintly blue. "Because she needed me." The queen nodded slowly. "That is why the bond accepted you, not by blood, but by heart." Her words lingered in the air like music. Ethan didn't realize he had stepped closer until he saw his reflection in her eyes. They stood only a breath apart, two worlds colliding in silence. Then suddenly the air behind them cracked with light. An explosion rocked the far wing of the palace. The queen spun instantly, her armor forming around her body like living metal. Guards rushed in, shouting, "Assassins from the outer ring." Ethan grabbed Leary, shielding her behind a pillar as debris rained down. Flames reflected in the queen's eyes as she lifted her hand, summoning a barrier of blue fire. Her voice thundered, "Protect the royal bloodline." The attackers came fast, dark shapes leaping through the smoke, their weapons humming with strange energy. Ethan didn't think, he just moved, grabbing a fallen guard's blaster and firing back. Two of the assassins dropped, but one reached the throne steps, blade raised toward the queen. Without hesitation, Ethan charged, tackling the alien before the strike could land. The blade sliced across his shoulder, searing pain exploding down his arm. But the queen's energy burst outward, freezing the attacker midair in glowing chains. When silence returned, smoke filled the hall. Ethan staggered, clutching his wound, and the queen caught him before he fell. Her eyes glowed with something fierce, almost tender. "You risked your life for me," she whispered. He tried to laugh, blood on his lips. "Guess that's what family does." Her hand glowed as she touched his wound, healing light spreading through him. For a heartbeat, their connection deepened, the bond pulsing with warmth and something dangerously close to affection. The queen looked away quickly, hiding the emotion that flashed across her face. Outside, the palace sirens blared, and the stars burned brighter than ever. But Ethan didn't notice, because for the first time since arriving, he no longer felt like an outsider. He felt like someone meant to be there. And somewhere deep in the shadows, the Council of Viara watched, whispering about the human who had saved their queen, and what that might mean for the future of the throne. The next morning the palace was silent, smoke still rising from the broken towers. Ethan's arm ached where the blade had cut, but the queen's healing light had sealed the wound. He sat near Lyri's bed, watching her sleep peacefully, unaware of the chaos outside. He wished he could keep it that way, but the sound of armored footsteps told him peace wouldn't last. The doors opened and 2 royal guards entered, their faces hidden behind mirrored helmets. "Human Ethan Cole," one said. "The High Council summons you to judgment." Ethan frowned. "Judgment? For saving your queen?" The guard didn't answer, only gestured toward the corridor. Lyri woke up and clung to his arm. "Pago." He smiled gently, trying to hide his worry. "Just for a little while. I'll be back soon." They escorted him through shining corridors lined with alien carvings. At the end waited a massive chamber shaped like a star, filled with glowing thrones. 12 council members sat there, their forms tall and thin, eyes like burning silver. Queen Sereth stood before them, her crown dimmed, her expression unreadable. The eldest counselor rose, his voice sharp like crystal. "This human interfered with royal affairs. His bond is dangerous to the realm." Ethan clenched his fists. "I didn't ask for any bond. Your queen said your child marked me." The hall buzzed with whispers. The counselor's eyes narrowed. "And now you endanger our bloodline. You attract chaos. Last night's attack proves it." The queen stepped forward, her tone calm but firm. "The attack came from those who fear change, not from him." The counselor sneered. "You defend him too easily, Your Majesty. Have you forgotten our law?" Ethan could feel the tension twist like a storm. He looked around and realized most of them already hated him. They didn't want truth, they wanted a reason to erase him. He raised his voice anyway. "If you think I'm the threat, you're blind. I nearly died protecting her." The room fell quiet. The queen's gaze softened for an instant. But the counselor only said coldly, "Then prove your worth, human." A circle of energy formed on the floor, glowing red and blue. "This is the trial of blood," the queen whispered under her breath. Ethan looked at her, confused. "Trial of what?" "It's an ancient test," she said softly. "It measures spirit, courage, and truth. If you fail, the bond breaks, and so does your life." Before he could react, the energy pulled him into the circle. The room vanished, replaced by endless darkness. A voice echoed through the void, deep and ancient. "Human of Earth, what gives your life meaning?" Ethan's heart raced. He saw flashes, his old home, the war, the loneliness before coming to Kareth 4. He whispered, "Connection, family, the chance to make things right." The darkness shifted, forming shapes, shadows of his fears. He saw himself alone again, Lyri crying, the queen turning away. He shouted, "No, I won't let that happen." Light burst from his hand, the bond mark glowing like fire. The shadows dissolved, and the void cracked with brilliance. Suddenly he stood back in the council chamber, breathing hard. The circle dimmed, and the queen stepped closer, her eyes wide. The eldest counselor rose, his tone changed. "The bond accepted him fully. The child's mark and the queen's essence have merged. He cannot be unbound." Murmurs swept through the chamber, fear and awe mixing like smoke. The queen turned to Ethan, her voice quiet but proud. "You have done what no outsider ever has." Ethan tried to speak, but words failed. He just nodded, exhausted. The counselor's gaze lingered on him, cold and calculating. "Very well. The human remains under royal protection," he said. "But be warned, such bonds invite enemies from beyond." After the trial, the queen led Ethan through a hidden passage. The corridor was narrow and dim, filled with the hum of energy veins running through the walls. "You shouldn't have faced that alone," she said, her voice softer than before. Ethan smiled faintly. "You told me not to run, remember?" For the first time, she laughed, a quiet, musical sound that made the air warmer. "You are reckless, Ethan Cole," she said, "but your courage, it reminds me of someone I once loved." They stopped before a tall window overlooking the twin moons of Veara. Leary ran up to them, her tiny arms wrapping around their legs. The queen placed a gentle hand on the child's hair. "Perhaps fate brought you for a reason I do not yet understand," she murmured. Ethan looked at her reflection in the glass, her face caught between strength and sorrow. He wanted to say something, anything, but before he could, an alarm echoed through the palace again. A guard rushed in, bowing low. "Your Majesty, ships from the outer ring approach the capital. They demand the human surrender." The queen's expression hardened instantly, her eyes glowing fierce gold. "Then they shall learn," she said, her voice cold as fire, "that the human is under my protection." Ethan's pulse quickened. The queen's hand brushed against his for only a second. The contact sent a wave of heat through the bond. In that moment, he understood. His life was now tied not only to the queen and her child, but to the fate of an entire empire. And far beyond the stars, something ancient awakened, drawn to the spark of their bond. The sky above the capital burned red as thousands of ships filled the horizon. Lightning crackled through the clouds as the Outer Ring Alliance began their assault. From the palace balcony, Ethan could see the streaks of plasma fire slicing through the atmosphere. The queen stood beside him, her armor forming from shimmering light, every plate pulsing with power. Her soldiers lined the ramparts below, chanting her name like thunder. Ethan felt the ground tremble under his boots. He had fought before as a human engineer on distant colonies, but nothing like this. This wasn't just war, it was an invasion of a living world. The queen's gaze was calm, unbroken, yet he could sense the weight she carried. "Why are they attacking?" he asked. She answered without turning. "They fear what you represent, Ethan Cole, a human bound to royal blood. They think it will change the balance of power." He swallowed hard, watching energy blasts light up the night. "I never asked to change anything," he said quietly. Her eyes met his, glowing like twin stars. "Fate rarely asks permission," she replied. Suddenly the tower shook, a beam of plasma striking close enough to shatter half the balcony. Ethan pulled Leary into his arms, shielding her as fragments rained down. Guards rushed forward, shouting, "Your Majesty, the lower city is breached." The queen raised her hand, summoning a barrier of blue fire that sealed the broken wall. Her voice echoed, "Evacuate the civilians, hold the gates until I return." Ethan frowned. "You're going out there?" She looked at him with that same fierce calm. The Queen of Veara does not hide behind walls. He grabbed her wrist before she could step away. "Then I'm coming with you." Her expression softened just for a moment. "You are brave, human," she whispered. "But this battle will burn worlds." He smirked. "Guess it's time to test if your bond really protects me." The queen's lips curved slightly, almost a smile. "Very well," she said, summoning another armor piece that wrapped around his chest like molten metal. The mark on his wrist glowed brighter, syncing with hers. When their eyes met, he felt the bond pulse, energy flowing between them like a shared heartbeat. Moments later they stood on the battlefield. The air was thick with smoke and ash, alien ships hovering low, their weapons raining fire upon the crystal streets. Ethan fired one of the plasma rifles handed to him, the recoil fierce but manageable. Each shot tore through the enemy ranks. The queen moved beside him, blades of energy forming from her hands, slicing through soldiers like light through glass. Every move she made was graceful and deadly. He had seen soldiers fight before, but nothing like her. She was war-given shape. "Left flank," she commanded, and he obeyed without hesitation. They fought side by side, their rhythm perfect. When a blast hit near them, she threw her shield around his body, taking the shock herself. He shouted, "You could have died." She smiled faintly through the smoke. "And break the bond? Never." As the night deepened, the enemy lines began to falter. Then a massive ship descended, dwarfing the city below. From its hull emerged a towering alien warlord in obsidian armor, his voice booming across the field. "Queen Sereth of Veara, surrender the human and the child, or watch your empire fall." The queen stepped forward, her aura flaring bright gold. "I would rather burn my world than give them to you." The warlord raised his hand and fired a blast straight at Ethan. But before it hit, the queen appeared in front of him, the explosion striking her directly. She fell to her knees, smoke rising from her armor. Ethan ran to her, heart pounding. "Sereth, stay with me," he whispered. She coughed softly, blood glowing faint blue. "Do not let them take her." Her fingers brushed his cheek before she lost consciousness. Something inside Ethan snapped. The bond flared. His vision turned white, energy bursting from the mark on his wrist like fire from a star. Every weapon near him melted. Every enemy screamed as invisible force swept across the battlefield. The power wasn't his, it was hers, flowing through him. The sky roared as the great ship cracked open, burning like a fallen sun. Silence followed, the invaders retreating in terror. Ethan collapsed beside the queen, his body shaking from the surge. He cradled her head, whispering, "You're not dying on me, not now." The mark between them glowed fiercely, her wounds beginning to close. When her eyes opened again, soft light returning, she whispered, "You wielded my energy." He smiled weakly. "Guess that makes us even." She looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time, her royal mask broke. "You risked your soul for me," she said quietly. He replied, "You already had it." For a moment, neither moved, the chaos fading around them as their bond shimmered brighter than the fires in the sky. Above, the clouds parted, revealing the twin moons shining side by side. And deep within the palace ruins, the council watched through crystal monitors. "The prophecy is unfolding," one whispered. "The human made of stars has awakened." The battle was over, yet the smell of burning metal still hung heavy in the air. The wounded were carried back into the palace, the once bright halls now cracked and scarred. Ethan walked beside the queen, supporting her with one arm while she leaned on him. Every step left trails of glowing dust that faded slowly, like the echo of their shared power. When they reached the healing chambers, alien medics bowed deeply, afraid to meet his eyes. Whispers spread across the corridors, the human who used the queen's light. Some said he was blessed, others called him cursed. Ethan ignored them. All he cared about was that Sereth was still breathing. She rested on a crystal bed, her eyes closed, the glow of the bond still flickering faintly under her skin. Leary sat near her mother, holding her hand, whispering tiny words in their alien tongue. Ethan watched quietly, his chest heavy with emotions he could barely name. He had never felt this kind of connection before, not with anyone, not even back on Earth. Hours passed before Sereth stirred, her voice soft but steady. "The city?" she asked. "Safe," Ethan replied. "You stopped them, we stopped them." Her gaze met his, a tired smile on her lips. "No, you stopped them. Your strength saved my world." He shook his head. "I didn't know what I was doing. It just happened." She reached out, touching his hand. Power like that never comes by chance. It comes by heart. The moment stretched, quiet and warm, until a guard entered hurriedly. "Your Majesty, the council requests immediate audience. They say the prophecy has begun." Seretha's expression hardened. She rose from the bed with slow grace. Ethan followed, unease crawling up his spine. The council chamber glowed brighter than before, yet the mood was colder. The eldest counselor stood, his silver eyes sharp. "You used forbidden power, Majesty," he said, "and you allowed the human to wield it. That act breaks the balance of stars." The queen answered calmly. The bond shared its light to protect Vayara, not destroy it. The counselor's tone darkened. "Perhaps, but that bond grows stronger than you realize. It changes him, and it may change you." Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady. "If you think I want power, you're wrong. I just want her and the child safe." The chamber erupted in murmurs. The counselor smirked. "And there it is, emotion, attachment, dangerous words for a mortal bound to a queen." Seretha's voice turned sharp. "Enough, he saved your lives, all of you." But Ethan could see it. Their fear was spreading. That night, the palace was quiet again, too quiet. Sereth stood on her balcony, the moons reflecting on her armor. Ethan approached slowly, unsure if he should speak. "You should rest," he said gently. She looked over her shoulder, her eyes softer now. "How can I rest when the stars themselves whisper of war?" He stepped beside her. "Then don't face it alone." She turned fully to him, her gaze searching his face. You speak as if you belong here. Maybe I do now, he said with a faint smile. The bond between them pulsed again, warm and alive. For a moment, they forgot the world outside, the distance between species, the laws of their people. When her hand brushed his chest, the glow of their marks merged, a single heartbeat shared by two worlds. But far below, in the shadows of the great towers, the council gathered in secret. The queen is blinded by him. One hissed. The prophecy says a human will either unite the stars or end them. The eldest replied, then we must decide his fate before she does. In the darkness, they formed a plan, one that would strike at the bond itself. Back in the upper chambers, Sareth suddenly shivered, feeling the disturbance in the air. Ethan noticed instantly. What's wrong? She frowned. Someone just touched the thread of our connection. Can they break it? Her voice was barely a whisper. Only by breaking one of us. Leary appeared at the doorway, clutching a small crystal sphere. It glowed, she said softly. The light turned dark. Sareth took it, her expression pale. They've awakened the seal of separation, she breathed. Ethan frowned. What does that mean? It means, she said quietly, eyes filled with both sorrow and rage. They plan to kill you to end the bond. Lightning flashed across the sky, thunder rolling through the palace walls. Ethan felt the ground tremble beneath his feet. He looked at her, saw the fear she tried to hide, and spoke with quiet resolve. Then they'll have to go through both of us. Sareth's gaze met his, fire returning to her voice. Then so be it, human of stars. Outside, the twin moons dimmed behind gathering storm clouds. And somewhere deep within the cosmos, ancient forces stirred, drawn to the light of a bond strong enough to defy fate itself. The night sky above Vayara was no longer calm. Storms of energy rippled through the clouds, and the twin moons flickered like fading hearts. Inside the palace, Ethan stood beside Queen Sareth as the alarm bells screamed across the halls. The council had made their move. Guards loyal to the crown clashed with those sworn to the council's secret order. Blue and red fire lit the corridors, filling the air with smoke and fear. Sareth turned to Ethan, her eyes fierce. They will strike at the heart, the bond chamber. He nodded, gripping the plasma rifle tighter. Then we stop them there. She smiled faintly, proud and sad all at once. If we fail, the bond ends with us. Ethan answered softly. Then we don't fail. They ran through corridors that once glowed with peace, but now burned with chaos. Leary was safe in the inner vault, guarded by Sareth's most loyal soldiers. But the queen's steps were heavy. She could feel the energy in the air twisting. The council was using ancient power. When they reached the central chamber, the sight froze Ethan's blood. A circle of 12 counselors surrounded a massive crystal core. Its light was dark now, pulsing red instead of gold. The eldest counselor turned, his expression like ice. Your Majesty, you have broken our order. You have tainted the bloodline with human weakness. Sareth's voice rose like thunder. I brought life back to our world. He raised a crystal blade. Then let it end with yours. Ethan stepped forward, placing himself between her and the council. Try me first, he said. The chamber shook as the core flared, beams of energy swirling toward them. Sareth shouted. They are activating the seal of separation. If it completes, we'll both die. He met her gaze. Then we end it together. She whispered his name like a prayer. Ethan. The council's chant grew louder, words older than memory itself. The crystal cracked, lightning tearing across the room. Sareth lifted her hands, summoning her light, golden and pure. Ethan's mark ignited an answer, blue fire burning through his veins. The two lights collided in the air, merging into a brilliant white that silenced everything. For a moment, time itself froze. Ethan saw flashes, Earth, the mines, Leary's laughter, the queen's eyes when she first called him brave. He felt the bond inside him expand beyond his body, beyond life. Their energy intertwined, two hearts beating as one. Then the light exploded outward, shattering the seal, tearing the council's spell apart. When the brilliance faded, the chamber was in ruins. The council lay scattered, their power drained. The eldest tried to crawl away, whispering, You cannot fight destiny. Ethan lifted his weapon, but stopped as Sareth placed her hand on his arm. Her voice calm and firm. No, He is right. We do not fight destiny. We shape it. She stepped forward, her aura blazing gold once more. To all of Veara, she declared, her voice echoing through every speaker. The bond between worlds has saved us. This human fought for what we forgot: love, courage, and unity. From this day forward, Veara and Earth shall share one star. Her words carried across the galaxy, igniting hope in places long forgotten. Ethan lowered his weapon, breathing hard. He looked at her, truly looked, and saw both strength and peace. "You did it," he whispered. She smiled. "No, we did." Their hands touched, and for the first time, no magic flared, only warmth. Real, simple, human. Later, when the sun rose over the repaired city, Lyri ran into the hall, laughing as she jumped into Ethan's arms. Sareth watched them, her crown dimmed but her heart bright. "You still think you don't belong here?" she asked softly. He smiled, holding Lyri close. "Guess this is home now." The queen stepped beside him, her voice gentle. "Then let it be forever, my human of stars." The bond mark on their skin shimmered one last time, settling into a faint golden glow. No longer a chain, but a promise. Outside, the moons aligned, and the people of Veara bowed to the dawn. The legend of the human of stars had begun. A tale whispered through galaxies, of a man who defied fate, loved beyond species, and turned two worlds into one. And as light bathed the palace once more, Ethan whispered quietly under his breath, "Guess humanity wasn't so small after all."